Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another Boruto Naruto Next Generation discussion. And now that we got the Boruto time skip coming up in the next Boruto manga chapter, I wanted to take our conversations about Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan to a different level, since we've already discussed why Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan awakening isn't bad writing and it doesn't contradict the lore, and why I believe that one of Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan powers will be linked to Ameno Uzume, the goddess in Shinto mythology. I wanted to shift gears into a Boruto fan theory that got sent to me by one of my patrons that I do believe does need to be brought up in the context of this conversation. So my patron sent me a message saying that they believe that Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan abilities might take inspiration from Amatsu Mikoboshi, with one of the meaning behind this name being the August Star of Heaven, and they point out that Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan pattern is that of a sun, but they say that a sun is technically still a star, and this deity could also serve as the inspiration for another Otsutsuki, potentially one who wishes to stop the Otsutsuki clan itself, because the deity was banished for being rebellious. While you guys know my stance on Sarada's Mangekyo powers, one likely being Amaterasu and one being linked to Ameno Uzume, my patron might be onto something here. The sun is technically a star. Sarada has a sun pattern eye, which is basically a star. The Sasuke Redstone story reveals that Sarada is fascinated with stars, and I think this stands a chance to be attached to one of her Susanoo powers and abilities. Just as Itachi and Shisui Susanoo literally had the powers or weapons that were linked to Japanese culture or Shinto mythology, I think Sarada stands a reason to get buffed in the same way, because this deity literally connects to Sasuke's Mangekyo Sharingan power. So even if you ignore the sun and the star links, this information still sticks. Sasuke's blaze release power and the variations are all linked to Kagutsuchi. Kagutsuchi is the parent to Amatsu Mikoboshi, just like how Sasuke is Sarada's parent, and Sasuke happened to be there when she awakened her Mangekyo Sharingan. If this isn't her other Mangekyo power, applying Amatsu Mikoboshi to her Susanoo is something we have to look at, which sets the foundation for a set of additional powers and skills that's rival only by the ones that you get from checking out Skillshare. This video is going to be brought to you by Skillshare. Just as Sharingan users are always upgrading themselves by copying ninjutsu with their Sharingan, you should be doing the same using Skillshare, because in 2023, traditional work and jobs aren't one size fit all, and Skillshare allows you a chance to learn new skills that can help you take a hobby and turn it into a profitable side hustle, and help you learn how to design a career that fits you. No goal is too small, and with Skillshare, what might seem like a mountain to you today will feel like a molehill once you start using Skillshare. Thinking about the future can be intimidating, but Skillshare helps take the pressure off by starting small and giving you the tools to start taking that first crucial step towards your goal. For me personally, the classes on diversify your income and earn passive income tool stood out to me because it's something that I'm currently trying to do, but I know I'm not foolish enough to think I know it all, especially when it comes to trying to build my own website, which is something I want to have up and running by the end of this year. So for me, I'm going to be taking Mimi Chow's courses because that's something that adds real value to my goals that I want to accomplish. The same with the class on creative confidence and silencing your inner critic, which my guy Isaiah, who helps me out occasionally with editing, can tell you that's a huge problem for me, because I am literally my worst critic. I cannot stress this enough. Even if you're not looking at this from a creative perspective like I am, if you're somebody that wants to gain new skills to help you in your current employment, Skillshare has hundreds of career-focused classes that will be of huge benefit to you. And just to get personal with you guys, at my last employment when I was running social media, they required me to learn how to use After Effects and Adobe Photoshop. I took those classes here over on Skillshare. The first 1,000 people who use my link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. So being honest with you, taking a page out of Itachi's book where he had the 3 sacred treasures of Japan for his Susanoo weapons, the Tosca Plate, the Yadamir, and the Yasaka Magatamas, having this be something attached to Sarada Susanoo might tip the scale for in a quest to be able to battle Otsutsuki level threats, because it would give her the hacks that's needed to level the playing field in a battle with Otsutsuki. So when we look at the Chronicles of Japan, Mikoboshi is briefly mentioned as being captured and defeated in one of the stories, but when we look at the Chinese and Buddhist equivalents, something interesting pops up, which is being associated with a sword as well as with the stars. And this even goes back to the fact that Kagusuchi, when you look at a lot of the Shinto references that you have, Kagusuchi, the parent to Amatsu Mikuboshi, is also associated with blacksmiths, which is why Sasuke has so many different versions of his Amaterasu when he uses Blaze Release. So I bring this up because while American fans of Naruto are likely aware of this name from Marvel Comics, in recent Japanese anime and manga, we've seen this name be brought up, or we've seen references mentioned, and I think something along the lines of what Yashahime, the sequel to Inuyasha, which, cheap plug, my buddy Axel Beats has a lot of really dope Inuyasha and Yashahime content. However, Yashahime did bring up Mikoboshi, and I think it's something we can look at for the basis for Sarada Susanoo weapons. In that series, Rion mentions that this was a god who sent two swords to Earth, and the two swords, with one of these swords having a link to Japanese Shinto when you break down the actual name itself. I think that that's where we can actually look at some of the powers for Sarada Susanoo in the form of what this sword will actually be able to do. The sword in question was called the Batseiken, and while using it, the wielder was able to make his dead daughter meet him inside of his dreams, and one power of this sword was to restore life force. Breaking down the first part of the name, you have Baku, which is a spiritual being that is associated with dreams. In the video I did talking about the deities connected to Ameno Uzume and with some of her helpers, where I brought up the connections to Sarada's potential Mangekyo Sharingan powers, I mentioned how one of the gods was associated with draining and redistributing life force, which is just like the sword that we see that was just referenced. Initially, I thought that this might be used as a dojutsu power for Sarada. Perhaps one of the eyes drains life force or chakra and the other eye is able to replenish it. But if we go that route of her sword is patterned after the one that we see in the Chinese Buddhist version of Sanjo, that would be your link to apply those abilities to that sword, and that will be a major leveling of the playing field against Otsutsuki tier fighters. It would basically be doing what Kaguya planned to do to Momoshiki and Kinshiki, since we know, according to the scroll that she left behind in the manga, that she wrote she was afraid of them, writing them down by name, that she needed the Zetsu army to level the odds. Zetsu is able to do what? Absorb chakra and redistribute chakra and mimic chakra signatures, giving Kaguya the smallest edge that she needed to pull off one of her instant killing jutsu. Sarada being able to drain chakra from Otsutsuki with a sword or a dojutsu and redistribute it would allow her to play the same support role that Kaguya intended to have the Zetsu play in her battle against Momoshiki and Kinshiki. Narratively, this lines up even more when you consider the fact that Kaguya knew how Momoshiki and Kinshiki fought. She knew how the Otsutsuki clan fought, meaning that she thought this was a good enough countermeasure to give her the edge that she needed against the Otsutsuki. If it was good enough for a spook Kaguya, it's good enough for Sarada, especially because it's her in a support role that doesn't see her on the sidelines. Amatsu Mikuboshi is mentioned in the Neon Shoki in the story about the conquest of Nakasune, which is the world that exists between the high heavens, i.e. the stars, and the Yomi, which is the afterlife. It states that the before mentioned conquest that was planned by the gods to try and kill an evil god, i.e. Ameno Kasego, i.e. Amatsu Mikuboshi. I mention this because it brings me to the second part of what my patron said, and this goes from Sarada being linked to Sasuke to Sarada being linked to Amato's dead daughter, Abiki, and Amato's goal to have her soul implanted into her clone Delta. Sarada's Mangekyo power being used to foreshadow or set up another mixing of Asian stories is no different than Kishimoto using multiple stories to set up Sasuke, Itachi, and Orochimaru angle in the Naruto manga itself, where Itachi had a weapon that was connected to a Susanoo that came directly from his story that Orochimaru's character, being a snake, was partly based out of. Sarada with her Mangekyo powers, Amato wanting to bring back his dead daughter Abiki / Delta back to life, and another Otsutsuki or the ability from Shibai that borrows from this tale could be something that actually shares the same link. We know the Japanese river of the afterlife and the concept of children being in limbo is the basis for Amado's character motivation that was presented to us. That's how we predicted months in advance that Amado was trying to use Kawaki's karma to revive his daughter. We can now take this a step further because, as we did in the previous Sarada video on her powers, one of the deities associated with Ameno Uzume had the power to transfer life force and absorb life force. In some stories in the Nihon Shoki, this god is referenced as being one who was beaten into submission for going against the will of the gods and the other kami, and being connected to both the heavens and the afterlife depending on the story that you see, which the latter, the afterlife, is where Amado's daughter's dead soul actually resides. So far, the only pure-blooded Otsutsuki that we've seen in the story, they've been evil in the manga. It's only half-breeds like Hagoromo and descendants of half-breeds like Toneri that have shown the capacity to be good in the manga and in the main canon of the story, which in the case of Toneri is Naruto the Last, and Hagoromo obviously Naruto's manga. We're not going to be counting that filler arc in Naruto Shippuden where you got Kaguya's backstory, since it goes against some of what Naruto's manga and Boruto's manga established. One great example being that Kaguya came to Earth in the form that we saw her in when she fought against Naruto and Sasuke. There was no slender pre-chakra fruit MILF mommy Kaguya who doubled as an only Otsutsuki's model, getting her guts pushed in by some random human. The idea of there being an Otsutsuki who goes against the clan's belief of harvesting chakra and destroying planets, or using the power of the chakra fruit to bring back those from the dead, it isn't a stretch when we view it from the scope of this god associated with Sarada and the angle of defiance. What were we told about Shinjutsu? All ninjutsu is a mere imitation of Shinjutsu. Who was the most upset about this in the manga? Sarada was the most upset. The art of the Rini Rebirth casts the soul of the user into the afterlife to bring back dead souls from the underworld and exchange their life according to the 4th Naruto databook. It's not linked to chakra levels like Konan said, because that was retconned in the 4th Great Ninja War and in the 4th Naruto databook. A Rinnegan ninjutsu is not a stretch to say that there's a Shinjutsu equivalent to this that actually works on steroids, even though it's a jutsu that comes from Otsutsuki Eye in the case of the Rinnegan power. There could be a true version of this jutsu that belongs strictly to an Otsutsuki. The idea of this power being something that an Otsutsuki using Shinjutsu to be able to bring back Amado's daughter, it works well because Amado's being potentially set up. He said that karma was his last option, but the revival of his daughter is a Chekhov's gun. You don't mention something like that about her coming back to life or without doing it, and this would be an option that Amado didn't know about, though that part remains to be seen whether it's this or if it's going to be Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan power. We've seen Mangekyo Sharingan powers actually defy the very laws in nature itself. I'm curious to know what you guys' thoughts on this might be though. Meanwhile, check out my Chainsaw Man chapter 135 review.